It's a good looking rifle, this Marlin Model 336, but you know what they say, beauty is only skin deep, and I'm a little concerned. Hi, George here, and welcome to Tales from Target Suite, where I'll share my perspective on guns and shooting, and we'll spend some time at the range, and every now and then we'll reconvene right out there in my shop or at the farm in Louisiana, where I'll build some fun projects and share an adventure or two that'll make even a grown man smile. You know, I want to say thanks to my friend Ron for letting me feature this rifle, this Marlin Model 336, in a few of my videos. And I had the privilege to shoot this rifle several years ago when I hosted a bunch of guys from church at the farm in Louisiana for a retreat. And at the time, this was the only center-fire lever-action rifle around. And even though it was surrounded by polymer pistols and .22 caliber rifles of the rim and center fire persuasion, it got a lot of attention. But Ron tells me he's having lots of problems with failure to fire, so even though you saw it disassembled a couple of videos ago, that was just to compare it with the Marlin Model 1894. Today, I want to take a closer look and see what's under the skin, so to speak, and maybe we'll find a clue as to why it has that failure to fire issue. But let's get it taken apart and see what we can see with a closer look. You know, if you did watch that video featuring the Marlin Model 336 and the 1894, you heard me mention a connection with the Marlin Model 1893. And that connection is that they have the same basic 127-year-old design. Now, the parts are going to be a little bit different for the different calibers, but in general, the functionality and the piece part count is just about identical. But then I left you hanging because I mentioned a stronger bolt and an additional safety feature that was inherent to the Model 1893 and carried over into these two designs, the 336 and the 1894, but I didn't tell you what they were. And I'm going to rectify that oversight in just a few minutes. And, oh yes, if you haven't already, please hit subscribe. And then if you click on that little bell, YouTube says you'll get notified every time I upload a new video, usually on Tuesday. Well, the first thing I see is that, and Ron admitted he hadn't done a deep clean in a long time, but there's some really crusty old grease oil on the locking lug, and generally needs some little touch-up cleaning, so we can take care of that. But here's the thing that's significant. On my Marlin Model 1894, when I do this, you hear the firing pin rattling back and forth. Ron's firing pin does not make any noise. So right away, I'm suspicious that his problem with failure to fire is right inside here somewhere. And so we'll get this guy taken apart here in a few minutes, and we'll see what we can find. And so the first thing I did when I thought about taking this apart is I made a tool, because I had seen guys struggle so much with getting the extractor off. And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to make a really cool tool and do it. And, you know, my tool really works. It's really easy to do. But the first time I used it, this thing shot across the room, and I had to dig around forever to find it. So when you take it off, just be careful where it goes. Now, to get the bolt disassembled, we need to take out two pins. This pin right here controls the front half of the firing pin, and this pin right here controls the back half of the firing pin. I'm not sure what the Marlin terminology is, but basically the firing pin comes in two halves, and that is the safety feature that I was referring to, and I'll show you in a few minutes how it works. But you can see that the rear half of the firing pin is not lined up with the axis of the bolt. And so what has to happen is it has to go up and be pressed up into battery. But we'll talk about that in a minute. Okay, I was about to forget again to show you how this bolt lockup works. And you can see the locking lug has got this this cutout right here, this round cutout, and it lines up with the profile of the rear part of the firing pin. And so when the locking lug comes up, as the hand lever is closed, the hand lever forces the locking lug all the way up into this cavity, and it brings the rear part of the firing pin into battery, and you can see it moving up right there. And so, sorry it took me forever to get around to showing you how this works. Now, let's get this thing apart. I'll knock out these two pins and we'll take a look inside and see if we see anything that could be causing Ron's problems. Okay, the first thing we'll do is just push this one right back out. And there's the back half of the firing pin. There we go. Okay, notice how it comes out. There's actually this spring. This spring right here that fits down in the little groove right there. And so when we put it back together, we're going to want to make sure that little hook on that spring goes right back down in that slot. But it rests right there. Okay, now, let's see. I don't see anything really problematic here. There's an awful lot of oil on the firing pin, some thick oil, but that's interesting. I was expecting to see a lot of crud and some stickiness, but I'm not seeing it. So the way this works is this little spring that we looked at a while ago that hooks into this part of the front part of the firing pin is what presses the rear part of the firing pin down like this. And then when it goes into battery, when the rifle goes into battery, this comes up, bends that spring, lines up, and then when the hammer strikes, it can push on the front part of the firing pin. But I notice this is really rough right here. Now I don't think there's a lot of rubbing there, but the machining is pretty crude, and I may just touch that up just because I can. Yeah, it's pretty rough. But I'm going to touch that up just a little bit. Nothing drastic for sure. Okay, just a very light, just knocking off the high spots of that rough area. And now I'm going to take my pad here with some polishing compound. Well, it's better, but I'm really reluctant to do too much to that surface. So we're going to leave it like that, and let's put it back together and see and see what it's like. I'm surprised. I really thought we were going. Well, I got to get it cleaned up first, but I really thought we were going to find something going on in here, and it's just not so. But let me get this cleaned up, and we'll reassemble. Well, if the rattle was the key, then we've got the rattle back. But I don't know if it is or not, and we'll just have to let Ron put some rounds through his rifle and see if his failure to fire issue has been resolved. But as I said in another video, I'm not a gunsmith. It's not that I'm not comfortable kind of tinkering around with guns, but there's a lot about them I don't know. And so there may be some of you guys that know exactly what Ron's problem is, but I certainly don't see it here in the firing pin. But it's possible that whatever was making the firing pin sluggish, or not rattle, was making it sluggish and not transferring enough energy to the primer. So who knows? If you got any thoughts on that, jump in. I'm all ears. But let's get the rifle. Oh, you know what though? Before we put it back together, there is one other thing, and it's really something I've never seen before. And so let's take a look at the barrel. And let me show you what I found when I looked in the barrel. What you can't see just by looking here, but I will drop in a picture, is there is some really bad copper corrosion in here. And so the rifle had enough copper buildup, and then there was enough, whatever the atmospheric conditions were, the environment was, for that copper to turn green and corrode, and it actually looks like it's flaking off. And so we're going to clean his barrel for him while we've got everything out of here, because once we get done cleaning, especially with copper solvent, I'm going to want to flush all of that out of here and apply some fresh lubricant where it's appropriate. So let me clean that, and then we'll put everything back together. That's pretty smooth, isn't it? It's not bad for a rifle made in 1988, Marlin Model 336. And I'm not sure what we accomplished in this video, because I really felt like we were going to discover some problems inside that bolt that was causing Ron's rifle to not fire. But we didn't. And so who knows? But it was fun anyway, and we did get his barrel cleaned up and got everything cleaned up inside and lubed, and so it's going to be fun to shoot from now on if it just will fire. Hey, thanks for joining me for this one. A little bit of an odd video for me, but I hope it was a little bit informative and entertaining, and I'll see you soon, I hope. Take care.